Time is certainly running out for British Prime Minister Boris Johnson in a lock-in a Brexit deal. Now he has just 8 days left to work out an agreement, but there is hope.
There certainly is, Janie. The European Union has agreed to intensify discussions after successful talks about what a potential deal would look like. For more on this and all the latest in British politics, we're joined by Dr Marcus Papadopoulos, who is the editor of Politics First in London. Doctor, welcome first. And there really is this obvious, transparent sense of urgency.
Yes, indeed. I have just returned from Parliament, and I can tell you that Westminster is awash with talk that the British government and the European Union could be close, and I emphasise could be close, to agreeing on a deal. Now, that talk has been met with dismay by Remain MPs at Westminster and has been met with cautious applause by Brexiteers at Westminster. Now, what does this deal potentially involve? Well, it centres firmly on the Irish backstop, which of course is what ultimately brought down Theresa May's premiership. What I am hearing at Westminster is this, that Northern Ireland may be subject to EU customs rules, but only for a short term. And that would be in writing. That would be a guarantee in writing. Now, why is that crucial? Because that could meet the satisfaction of the Democratic Unionist MPs at Westminster. I'm hearing that the 10 DUP MPs at Westminster would be prepared to vote for a deal which sees Northern Ireland temporarily subject to EU custom rules, but providing it clearly states in writing that it is only to be in the short term and not in the long term. Now, if what I'm hearing materialises, then Boris Johnson could very well put that deal before the House of Commons, and it is possible that the maths would be on his side. And what I mean by that is that the House of Commons could approve this deal, because remember, the 10 DUP MPs are absolutely crucial. If Boris Johnson doesn't have their support regarding a solution to the Irish backstop, then Britain is not going to leave by or on the 31st of October with a deal. Then it is down to Boris Johnson to decide, does he withdraw the United Kingdom from the EU without a deal?
So many questions to be answered there, Doctor. Also, well, today, your time, Britain signed that deal worth £86.6 million with the shipping firms to ensure the supply of the vital medicines in the event of the border chaos. What do you think that says?
Well, you know, we need to be cautious of such developments. We can't discard them, but we have to remember that ever since the vote to leave the European Union back in June 2016, the UK Civil Service has been preparing for the worst case scenario. I'm referring, of course, to the UK leaving the EU without a deal. Now, in the worst case scenario, yes, there could be food shortages. There could be medical shortages. Now, no one is saying that that is actually going to happen. That is a worst case scenario. That is what we expect of the UK Civil Service, and the UK Civil Service is one of the finest in the world. So the agreement today needs to be taken very seriously. We can't discard the possibility that the UK could be braced with shortages should Boris Johnson withdraw the UK from the EU without a deal. But at the same time, we need to bear in mind that that is the worst case scenario. And we do know that in politics that often the worst case, the very worst case scenario, doesn't materialise.
From your point of view, what do you see the mood of the British people like at the moment? Is there a sense of glazing over slightly because every time they hear the word Brexit, because no one's talking about the economy, no one's talking about unemployment, no one's talking about domestic or foreign affairs. It has just absolutely blanketed the whole place.
That is absolutely correct, and I might add that no one is talking about 14 million people in Britain living in poverty, including 4 million children living below the breadline. Unfortunately, these hugely important issues of social justice, have been put on the back burner because of Brexit. So people in Britain, regardless of how they voted, even if they voted to remain, they really are sick and tired of this issue. And I know people, quite prominent people, who voted to remain, but they tell me that it is not in the interests of the UK economy for Britain to go into 2020 with the Brexit issue still lingering, with the Brexit conundrum still very much alive. That is good. That is not good news for manufacturing. That is not good news for foreign investors. Foreign investors, for example, the Chinese, the Indians and the Japanese, they need to know, is Britain leaving or is Britain staying? At the moment, foreign investors cannot strategically plan because there is uncertainty. So Brexit has polarised Britain. There's no question about that. And in particular, it has polarised England. But I think a lot of people want to see the end. They want to see the Brexit deadlock broken so that Britain can go into 2020. There can be an air of certainty for the UK economy. We can move on from Brexit and we can start addressing some very important issues. As I mentioned moments ago, 14 million people living in poverty.
Yeah, well, there's only about 8 more days to go until the 31st of October deadline. Just finally, quickly, Doctor, former Paralympian James Brown climbed the top of a plane yesterday in the Extinction Rebellion protests. Have we heard any more about that situation or any more protests to come?
No, I personally haven't heard any more about that. I did see the protests in the Westminster area, but I would say this, that the protests that we have seen regarding climate change, they really don't compare to the protests that we have seen relating to the issue of Brexit. People protesting in favour of Britain leaving and people protesting in favour of Britain remaining. I think that the climate protest has certainly caught the attention, in particular the methods that have been used, but really people's attention in Britain is focused firmly on Brexit. Will Britain leave by the end of this month? Will there be a snap general election? Will Boris Johnson be the shortest-lived premiership, or will his premiership be the shortest-lived in political history? Because if he doesn't withdraw Britain by the end of October, if he asks for a delay, then the Brexiteers in his Conservative Party, who propelled him to power this summer, could quite easily collapse his premiership. And so by Christmas, Britain could be going into the new year looking for a new Prime Minister.
Yeah, and the people looking for an enormous sigh of relief at some point when this discussion can finally come to some point of closure. Look, Doctor, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We'll talk to you soon.
Pleasure. Thank you.